Pathological demand avoidance is not currently in the DSM. What does that mean to me as a PDAer? I'm Catherine, I'm PDA. PDA stands for Pathological Demand Avoidance according to the medical model. It also stands for Persistent Drive for Autonomy. Doctors around the world are currently studying, recognizing, and working with PDAers. Conditions exist before the DSM officially recognizes and categorizes them. Wouldn't it be silly to think that there were no diseases before the first DSM was written in 1952? Further, the DSM is not a static document. The language evolves. Diagnoses are added, combined, separated, or removed from the list. Here's an example. It wasn't until 2013 that the Asperger's diagnosis was removed, even though the medical community had long been well aware of the terms problematic Voldemort origin. DSM is in fact full of Voldemort shit. Another example, until 1973, homosexuality was in the DSM. It was considered a disease or a disorder caused by either A, an internal defect in the patient, or B, an external malfactor, such as bad parenting or trauma. Mothers were frequently blamed for their children's sexuality. It was removed from the DSM because many doctors agreed that homosexuality was a normal part of the human experience, and the LGBTQAI community that already existed loudly agreed. As with many documents our society uses, the DSM was created by crusty, old, privileged white guys who thrive under systems of oppression like med school. The DSM reflects their bias and perspective, their culture, generation, and experiences. The DSM is about us without us. Can something perfectly human be classified in the DSM as a disorder or a disease? Yes. Can conditions be studied and treated even if they aren't in the DSM? Yes. Is the DSM an unbiased document that reflects up-to-date diagnostic understanding? No. Will the DSM someday officially recognize PDA as part of the autistic spectrum? Probably. Meanwhile, groups like the PDA Society and individual PDA self-advocates will be out here trying to raise awareness of our existence and our needs. Why? Because our most vulnerable neurokin are getting crushed and abused by standard parenting, law, medical, and educational practices. So much suffering that PDA has become synonymous with suffering, and someone who isn't visibly suffering may have a very hard time getting recognized as PDA autistic. If you identify as PDA, I encourage you to tell your story and help us expand the autistic narrative beyond the suffering model. When the experts catch up with us, we'll still be here. PDA is hell.